Hello everyone, it's Paul coming to you with something new. I write a lot about philosophical, psychological, sociological, and cultural, economical, and environmental issues in our world, and for a while now I've been considering discussing my papers and conversations here on YouTube. However, I've not had enough time given the amount of work I have from my various responsibilities. This video was prompted by my geography professor, Mrs. Chaddock, where for one of the assignments in her class I am able to create a video on a subject relevant to the class material. Exactly 1 year ago, on Tuesday, March 29, 2016, I submitted a paper titled Environmental Solutions regarding the issues surrounding the environment often discussed at that time. Since many of the things I discussed in this paper were brought up in my geography class, I felt that it was appropriate to combine my personal project and my class project in this video. At the end of the video, those of you who are viewing this in my class may ask me questions and we can discuss any aspect of the video that you would like to. Those of you watching this here on YouTube, feel free to comment and I will attempt to discuss the subject matter with you there as well. Also, please let me know if you would like to see more videos like this in the future. Environmental solutions. Whether you choose to believe it or not, we've all heard about the inhospitable wasteland our planet is turning into. Often when a person gets to a point where they just can't deny it anymore, they start to argue the cause. Did we cause it? Is it naturally occurring? Somehow they think that makes a difference, but does it? Why do we care what caused the global climate change? Shouldn't we be looking for solutions either way? Even if for some reason you're convinced that it's not presently happening, we know climate change will happen, as it has in the past, like with the Ice Age, and exists in many other states on worlds around us, like the 800-degree Fahrenheit weather and sulfuric acid clouds which blanket Venus. Like war, it happens, and to be unprepared not only risks your life, but the lives of everyone you care about. Similarly pointless and avoidant, people make the argument of whether it's even possible to do anything about it. There are endless examples throughout history of individuals or a group of people facing more nearly impossible odds, even examples of individuals succeeding against big oil on the matter of environmental pollution in our own country. In 1956, geochemist Claire Patterson gained fame for inventing the clean room, which he used to discover the still uncontested age of the Earth. However, arguably more important is the discovery he made of lead pollution and how burning lead gasoline was slowly killing the human race. Where would we be if Dr. Patterson had not ignored the naysayers or lacked the will to give up a fortune to stick to his beliefs? I don't know about you, but I may not have even been born. The number of people who could have died young or suffered birth defects and stillborns due to the lead poisoning is incalculable, and may very well have happened to me or one of my parents. People who question what is possible, I believe, oftentimes have never truly attempted a difficult task, or in actuality simply fear change. Luckily for our species, there are many individuals monitoring the situation with the knowledge and intelligence to think forward. Many such individuals have offered their ideas about how we might improve or even correct our current environmental crisis, including technological solutions and international agreement on environmental regulations. Developing futuristic-sounding technologies to take control of our planet or making global political reform may seem impossible, but if one pays attention to history and the developing technologies of today, they'll see that instituting these changes can be done. Our society seems to be rooting for the former of the two, expecting our scientists to develop a miracle technology to set things right. Because of this, people are putting all of the pressure on them and washing their hands of it. Simultaneously, people lack faith in the chance that our scientists will succeed at this before climate change has caused our species' extinction. I would argue that political and societal reforms that we can implement ourselves can make immediate difference, and that while the scientists continue their endeavors towards technological solutions, we should focus on making changes to our cultural practices that can make a difference. In the introduction of the book, This Changes Everything, by Naomi Klein, the author gives examples of large numbers of individuals making a difference in the climate change process back in the World Wars era, though it was unintentional. To support fuel conservation, pleasure driving was virtually eliminated in the UK, Klein wrote. Klein also remarked that in 1938 to 1944, use of public transportation in the US went up 87% and 95% in Canada. Additionally, in 1943, 3/5 of the population of the USA embraced rationing by growing victory gardens, which accounted for 42% of the fresh vegetables consumed that year. As Klein points out, all of these activities together dramatically reduce carbon emissions. Though seeming to take a lot of effort by a lot of people to accomplish, I believe little changes like these are the way we're going to ultimately improve the climate situation and our lives. Growing your own vegetables isn't just good for the environment after all. There are many changes like these we can make that don't involve waiting for our scientists to develop new miracle technologies. To give an example of one of these potential social reforms, our society could return to horse transportation. While it may not be the best solution today with our advanced technologies on the shelf, it is a viable one. For thousands of years prior to the invention of smog-gushing cars and decades after, humans used horses for transportation. With the advent of large cities, skyscraper apartments, and of course cars, people drifted away from horses, but I wouldn't say it's impossible for the wheels to turn around again. One doesn't even have to know how to ride a horse to use horse transportation, as the introduction of chariots and its evolution into carriages has made horse transportation more comfortable and easier for the average person. Also, with our modern understanding of physics and engineering, I imagine that our engineers would come up with new advancements that would astound us if they set their minds to it. After reading that, the question going through most people's heads is probably, how is it viable? There's likely quite a bit of hesitation one would have about this idea, and I chose this example because of that. It is one of the least realistic sounding proposals one might hear, so in showing how even this is possible, it sets an example for those starting the argument on whether it's at all possible to do anything about the climate crisis. I think the top 3 issues regarding horse transportation on the city-town level are the fear of large animals, housing for the horses, and cost of care, which I feel are actually non-issues. The thing is, humans have been bonding with horses for as long as they have dogs and cats, and those who still do have horses often express their love for them as any person does for their cat or dog. Some might even argue that the bond between a person and a horse goes deeper. Not to mention, horses are very docile creatures, and even protective of those they care about. I think that if people who are afraid of them actually met a horse and learned about them, at least to the extent of common knowledge about cats or dogs goes, then the fear would be replaced with a love and affection, which would create a market preference for them. The issues of housing and expenses for the horse would replace that of our cars. Without cars, parking lots could become stables, which creates jobs. Unlike the parking attendant position, which has been phased out at many businesses, stable hands will always be needed. Additionally, the feces shoveled from the stables can be repurposed for alternative energy facilities and farming. At only $4,500 to $6,000 a year bills for a horse, the costs are less expensive than the $8,698 per year cost that AAA estimated in 2015 for the owning and operating of a vehicle, not to mention the initial savings one makes purchasing or adopting a horse instead of buying a car. One should also consider the difference in emergency expenses of approximately $2,000 for a horse falling severely ill versus the cost to repair a car that has been in a significant accident, which could be $10,000. For that matter, a couple corner bumps at 3 miles per hour can cost $1,800 alone, whereas a horse can heal from a minor injury without any additional financial costs being made. Additionally, if a person survives totaling a car, the cost of buying a new car to replace it is a significant financial burden, especially if there are significant medical bills. Compare that to the lack of personal medical bills from not being injured when a horse dies, and the cost of burial, which can range from free to as expensive as you want, and the lack of cost in adopting a horse to replace one that has died, and you can recognize further practical incentive to switch. Surprisingly, I hear the proposition of using bicycles instead of cars much more often than I hear the proposition to replace cars with horses from environmentalists and environmentally conscious individuals, which I feel is far less practical, not only because there are disabled individuals who do not have the option, but because our culture pushes towards the concept that mental activity is greater than physical, of which the result is physical laziness, which has and will continue to prevent a total transition to bicycle transportation. Perhaps the bicycle is more appealing in our minds because they assert our dominance over nature, the aspect of it known as gravity and the laws of physics limiting our forward maneuverability and speed to energy ratio in this case. Whereas using horses is working with nature, which we are culturally indoctrinated to see as primitive. Aside from the fact that bicycles are greatly physically exerting, leading to a decreased interest in their use in any given moment of a day, horses can be faster. A strong, healthy horse can move quickly over hills and on flat land. Not to mention the comfort of riding in a carriage far outweighs those hard bicycle seats that wedge between one's gluteuses and bruises one's tailbone. All of these things are why I feel that horses are not only a viable option, but even a viable option that is more practical than some of the other propositions I've heard. The next great issue of carless transportation is transportation along the intercity level, that is to say, long-distance travel. This cannot be solved with horses as easily as on the city-town level, nor do I suggest it. In the city of San Diego in California, we have a form of public transportation that is called the trolley system. These entirely electricity-powered machines, akin to a train, can get up to 55 miles per hour before they have to start slowing down to make the next stop. With some tweaks and larger stretches of land between stops, electric-powered trains could replace the highways that cover our planet and even save time on transportation. Removing the fuel consumption of transportation makes a huge dent in our pollution, but I haven't forgotten that electricity comes from burning fuel as well. According to Inside Energy and the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the average household in the United States of America uses 911 kilowatt hours per month. That's 10,932 kilowatt hours per year for each household. It takes a typical coal power plant 11,369.28 pounds of coal to make that much electricity. For a month, that is 947.44 pounds of coal per household. A typical petroleum fuel plant uses 63.77 gallons of petroleum to make 911 kilowatt hours. Is it even possible to imagine the amount of carbon monoxide and nitrogen monoxide, aka nitric oxide, those plants are pumping out each year at 765.24 gallons per household? We have the technology to completely convert to non-polluting power plants fueled by solar and wind, despite big oil's propaganda saying otherwise. In 2016, independent presidential candidate Harry Braun's documentation for his plan to convert the entire United States of America to renewable energy, he explains how approximately 2.7 million 2-megawatt wind-powered hydrogen production systems would permanently displace all of the fossil and nuclear fuels in the country. In his work, he cites the US EIA for numbers pertaining to power consumption and compares this to the data these systems would produce. Not only is it possible, it's easy. Braun points out that these wind-powered hydrogen production systems could easily be mass-produced in less than 2 years once the tooling is in place because of how similar they are to an automobile from a manufacturing perspective. Combine that with the abolition of cars I proposed earlier, and I'm guessing that timescale drops down to no time at all. Car manufacturers could easily switch to the power industry and make money from the wind-powered hydrogen production systems they make and maintain parts for, causing little loss of employment. This is just one of many possible solutions for environmental renewal that environmentalists like independent presidential candidate Harry Braun suggests and backs up with solid plans to implement. Renewable energy is the future of electricity, and thus electric-powered vehicles are the future of transportation. That includes electricity-powered cars, which falls into the category of modern technology that creates a better solution than the option of switching to horses that I mentioned at the beginning of that proposition. 2 years is still pretty quick to convert an entire country to alternative energy. And the highways to railroads idea is still a valid option alongside electric cars despite the increased electricity consumption. Electric cars being already on the road, along with Harry Braun's plan for alternative energy, is the fastest way to go smog-free. However, our environmental problems are not limited to the destruction of our atmosphere. Nature is also being driven to uninhabitability for humans through our destruction of life and with our production of waste. Right now we are in what author of the sixth extinction, Elizabeth Kolber, calls the sixth mass extinction event for our planet, which refers to the accelerated widespread extinction of species on our planet that is occurring today and, as she outlines in her book, has only occurred to this extent 5 other times that scientists have discovered in Earth's history. The one presently occurring is, however, the first that is caused entirely by one species of our planet, human beings. Independent presidential candidate Harry Braun, who is the CEO and senior scientist of Mesa Wind LLC, has, in addition to publishing works on the hydrogen economy, solar power, and photobiology, also published documents including information on the sixth mass extinction event. In her book, The Sixth Extinction, Elizabeth Kolber calls this modern man-made mass extinction event the Anthropocene. She outlines the other mass extinction events and explains that aside from the 6 mass extinction events, there have been other minor extinction events throughout time. Throughout her book, Kolber meets with scientists, researchers, and guides to uncover more information about what is going on, and does not express overt opinion so as to present it in a way for readers to make up their own minds. Some of the habitats she visited, where she outlined the decline of life, includes the Panamanian rainforest, Great Barrier Reef, Andes Mountains, and Bikini Atoll. Considering the extent of the decline of life in these areas and other areas around the world, which can be directly linked to human activity, I would agree with scientists and environmental experts that humans are making a serious and dangerous global-scale negative impact to the ecosystems of Earth that may prove to be a haunting memory for those humans that survived this mass extinction event. The documentary Global Warming: What You Need to Know discusses the predicted consequences of global warming, which is one of the causes of the sixth mass extinction event according to scientists and environmental experts like those I've cited in this paper. The narrator and Peabody Award-winning journalist Tom Brokaw explains that global warming is the rise in the average temperature of Earth's atmosphere and oceans, which has been occurring since the late 19th century. The documentary also includes scientific data and resulting scientific projections for its continuation. Consequences they predict include the melting of the ice caps, coastal cities becoming submerged in seawater, severe weather anomalies like heat waves, droughts, and flooding relentlessly assaulting the planet, crop failure, mass migration, riots, and extinction. The documentary includes significant detail regarding all of these consequences and elaborates on the scientific evidence behind these projections. The Center for Biological Diversity also reports on the sixth mass extinction event this planet has had in the last 500 million years, also stating that the present mass extinction event is not only a mass extinction of animal species, but of plant species as well. They report that the species die-off rate is higher today than during the dinosaur extinction 65 million years ago, and currently fluctuating between 1,000 and 10,000 times the background extinction rate, which is a term given by scientists for the extinction rate of 1 to 5 species per year, which occurs between mass extinction events. At the rate we're going, they estimate that between 30 and 50% of all of Earth's species will be extinct by the middle of the current century. While they note that climate change plays a major role in this as well, they give it no more emphasis than the other major factors, like habitat loss due to humans building, and the introduction of exotic species via escaped pets, etc., all of which stem from human influence. They also mention that presently there are 14,000 to 35,000 endangered species in the United States alone, and attribute this estimate to conservation scientist David Wilco. The search for environmental solution grows ever more pressing, with massive environmental disasters like the sixth mass extinction event growing more and more significant throughout the entire planet. Another global-scale environmental disaster, which I mentioned before, is the melting ice caps, which is killing ocean species, causing ecological and climatic changes on our planet, and soon will cause oceans to swell up and engulf our coastal cities. However, the thing most people don't realize is how quickly this is actually happening. It isn't just the yearly increase in global air temperatures slowly melting the ice caps day after day. In the Discover magazine article, Ocean Warming Threatens Stability of Antarctic Ice Shelves by Carving Upside-Down Rivers into Their Undersides, environmental scientist Tom Yulsman discusses the warm ocean currents that are carving upside-down rivers or basal channels into the undersides of ice shelves all around the Antarctic continent, a discovery Yulsman attributes to lead researcher Karen Alley. He explains that in relation to this, the shelves are thinning faster than previously thought, threatening their stability, which will soon lead to these millennia-old shelves dislodging from their pinning points and rapidly disintegrating at sea, which will cause rapidly increasing tides. Independent presidential candidate Harry Braun discusses plans to make serious reforms to energy, economic, and environmental and related healthcare problems that we are facing today in his digitally published Harry Braun's Presidential Priorities 2016 photo document formatted file, which will have significant positive impact on the sixth mass extinction and our atmosphere. Though the content is vast, I will make the attempt to thoroughly outline a few of the key points he makes for environmental reform. One of the major environmental reforms is a plan he has outlined with detail and shown to be attainable within what could be his presidential term for conversion of the USA from fossil and nuclear fuels to a zero-carbon emission hydrogen economy. I explained earlier in this paper how he would develop the wind and hydrogen power plants, and wind power is self-explanatory, but another important thing to mention is the source of the aspect of hydrogen fuel, which he also explains in clear and understandable detail. The thing one has to consider is that the key to hydrogen-based fuel does not only rely on advancements in technologies that can generate energy through water, like electrolysis cells, or inefficient corn-based methods, but also on legalization of ingredients for efficient technologies which we developed in the past. As independent presidential candidate Harry Browne says, Henry Ford demonstrated in the 1920s that the least expensive hydrogen and/or ethanol was made from cannabis crops, which are 4 times more efficient than corn, without requiring any of the toxic oil-based pesticides or fertilizers, which is why it was half the cost of gasoline. This, he says, is the real reason why oil company lobbyists used the unknown Mexican slang term marijuana in their campaign to remove cannabis from the market as a dangerous drug, with no recorded vote in either the House or Senate in 1937, and over the objections of the American Medical Association. That's not the only reason he intends to legalize cannabis in the USA, though. Aside from the THC level in cannabis documented by the American Medical Association as not a toxic drug at all, unlike the legal prescription drugs, which according to the CDC are killing millions of Americans annually, he also points out that it is a 500-million-year-old neurotransmitter that switches on a remarkable two-way communication system throughout the brains of all vertebrate animals, which has completely redefined the science of neurobiology. Within Harry Browne's Presidential Priorities 2016 is also documentation of public knowledge acts committed by our government and specific figures in our government which have led to the acceleration of the 6th mass extinction event, which he promises that as president he would end immediately. For example, the worldwide missile strikes that Obama and the Congress have agreed upon, which contain uranium-238, and upon explosion, the resulting radioactive nanoscale particles and dust will then be diffused worldwide in the wind and rain, which will ultimately contaminate every man, woman, and child in the US and worldwide essentially forever, given that the half-life of U-238 is 4.5 billion years. Additionally, he includes details of the illegal dealings of Democratic presidential candidate Hilary Clinton and other presidential candidates, for example, the secret acquisition of bribes from highly toxic oil and uranium multinational corporations worldwide that Hillary Clinton procured for herself. He then outlines how his campaign will not only be abstaining from illegal dealings and bribes, but legal bribes as well, by not accepting any donations to his campaign. One of the political reforms I've thought of that we could do as a country to make a difference on the global climate situation is a simple adjustment to environmental impact laws like those analyzed by Vermont Law School's Environmental Tax Policy Institute to make them also apply to foreign companies wishing to import goods. In my opinion, the laws regarding environmental impact and taxation for businesses and corporations are not strict enough, but the issue with these taxes is the free market, which causes these environmental tax laws to make it cheaper for companies to make factories in other countries which pump out deadly pollution and contribute to our global climate situation and import their products back home, so that is what they do. It's just good business. Going green or going black, whichever makes the most profit, is the right choice according to economics. The proposition one typically hears to amend this issue is a tax on imported goods, which U.S. citizens are against due to the hike on prices of foreign goods. My suggestion would be to simply apply the same environmental impact laws or taxes to imported products so it costs more to move outside the country again, which helps with both our economical and climatic problems without affecting the prices of our foreign imports. European, Australian, Japanese, and other foreign-based manufacturers that already have environmental standards on par with the USA will not be affected by this tax and will be able to provide their products at the same price. This would reduce global pollution in itself, and even more significantly, if other high-consumption countries like the USA also instituted similar environmental impact laws. We could then use this increase in government funds associated with foreign companies paying the environmental tax for more recycling centers, and potentially for Harry Browne's plan to convert the country to wind and hydrogen power instead of only diverting the funds for military spending, as I believe was Browne's plan. More recycling centers will be necessary for my final proposition to improve environmental conditions, which addresses the concern of waste pollution. I believe the most significant way we can combat this insurgent against our planet is with recycling and converting from paper to reusable materials like metal and plastic. The myth one often hears in environmentalist circles is that using paper is better for the environment than plastic, but anyone who can look at the situation through objective, technologically informed eyes can see that it's the opposite. Yes, making plastic creates pollution. It is not biodegradable, and it's toxic, so it will sit in the ground forever, killing life around it. But common sense dictates that that also means that it is potentially endlessly recyclable. With the amount of plastic we already have made in the world, and our landfills, obsolete and broken appliances, and devices soon to be obsolete, I do not believe we would have to make any more until population and demand increases significantly beyond what it is today. Recycling facilities that run on clean energy can repurpose plastic without creating more pollution, and digging it out of landfills and having facilities sort the garbage will not only eliminate the negative environmental impact associated with plastic post-production, but create jobs that boost our economy. On the other hand, forests are going down every day, causing devastation to our planet's ecology, in order to provide people with paper that is not always recyclable, and often when it is, it's not re-recyclable. Because it is biodegradable, it doesn't last long, and it is less effective than, say, a tablet or laptop. Additionally, with advancements in ultralight durable metal and metal microlattice embedded plastic, cardboard boxes, which were never a good option in my opinion, and are already being phased out by weaker plastic shipping containers, are now simply ineffective. For humans to remain alive, we need a particular kind of atmosphere to breathe, a particular kind of plant and animal life for nourishment, a particular kind and quality of liquid to stay hydrated, and a particular kind of climate to survive in. All of these things are on the verge of destruction thanks to the pollution of our air, land, and water, killing off life. Climate change is destroying entire ecosystems, the ice caps melting, diluting the ocean water, making it less inhabitable for sea life, and eventually raising the oceans over our cities. Even though religion and science are commonly viewed as being in opposition, even the Pope of Rome has not only discussed the environmental crisis in favor of taking action to prevent further environmental catastrophe, but released a cyclical, the highest order a pope can make, stating that not only Catholics but all of us must listen to the scientific and moral reasons which he presented therein for protecting Earth, or as he calls it, God's creation. Included in this cyclical was information and scientific documentation regarding air pollution, toxic dumping, rising sea levels, extreme weather conditions, loss of biodiversity, melting Arctic glaciers, overfishing of the seas, and water pollution. Are we really going to continue arguing about whether it is naturally occurring or man-made, or worse, whether it's even happening or not? We can all see the effects of pollution on a local level, in particular incidents which are broadcasted from all over the world daily, like the 100 tons of dead fish that washed ashore in central Vietnam, or the radioactive vapors at Hanford, Washington nuclear site affecting 26 workers, which occurred just within the time it took me to write this paper. In conjunction with common sense, we can easily see that all of this pollution and disaster happening on a global level on an almost daily basis can have global scale consequences. So are we going to continue asking pointless questions? Are we going to start concentrating our focus on solutions so that we can limit the effects and eventually prevent our own self-annihilation?